Today's episode is proudly sponsored by Integrate, a wellbeing platform designed to help you reconnect with yourself and live a life of balance and fulfilment. With personalised assessments, science-backed tools, coaching and community support, Integrate empowers you to build resilience, reduce stress and thrive both personally and professionally. Visit www.integrate.net to claim your free 14-day trial and start your journey to balance today. And now, let's dive into this inspiring conversation. This week on Great Conversations, I am joined by the CEO and co-founder of Cognomie Coaching, John Young. John, welcome to Great Conversations. How are you today?
I'm very well. Thanks, Nicola. Thanks for having me.
You're more than welcome. Now, I'm going to apologise because the opening question that you have is extremely difficult, but it wasn't left by me. It was the former guest. So, John, what is your unpopular opinion?
Long pause.
Exactly.
It's such a difficult question without sort of venturing into, topics which might be, I don't know, a bit too controversial for the podcast, let's say. My answer revolves around people's definition of success, I think, because I think that a lot of people chase money and possessions and material goods. Even certainly when you're younger, everyone wants to earn as much money as they possibly can. That's kind of normal, but I think that continues on into later life as well. I'm 56 and there are plenty of my friends, the ones who haven't already retired, but there are plenty of them who are still always chasing something else because they believe that they're going to be happy if they make their next, 10 grand per annum, or, they've got an extra bedroom in their house, or bought a flashy car that they've always dreamt of. And these things just don't make you happy. And it's easy to say when you've attained certain things that you expect are going to make you a happier person. But the fact of the matter is that they don't. And when we're all sort of on our deathbeds, not to be too morbid about it, but all of the things that we chase in life will really not matter. And it will come down to a few things, I think. This is perhaps for later in the conversation. It will come down to the relationships you have and the people that you love and the people that are around you. They're the important things, and everything else really is not. So maybe that's my unpopular opinion, that a lot of what we think matters just simply doesn't. And I think it would be so great for people to realize this when they're so much younger.
It's the fine line, isn't it? Money doesn't buy you happiness, but actually, in the system and the world that we live in, money is quite important because it does.
You've got to have it.
Around.
Yeah.
So you got to have it. But as you say, it's that balance, isn't it? And I really like what you're saying around this definition of, what is important in our life, what are the values that we're building our life around, and then where are we investing our time in service of what? And I would love to understand more about, not even necessarily your definition of success, but more about happiness. Like, you mentioned that you think, going after and attaining these external things will not make you happy. What have you learned about this concept of happiness over the course of your personal and professional life?
I think happiness is all about getting the right perspective on things, actually, which links to what I said about my unpopular opinion and what people are trying to attain in their lives. If I think about what brings me personally the biggest joy, it really doesn't have anything to do with me. It's about what I can do for others. And that includes obviously my family, and my wife, and my kids, and all of my family and my friends. But much further than that, I think is being able to have a positive impact on, as many people as possible. And that might be through work. So, the work that we do at Cognomie is about coaching people to improve their mental fitness so they can deal with the challenges that life throws at them. And we all have those all of the time. Or it might just be, giving some money to charity or whatever it happens to be. Those are the things that make me happy. That's why I get out of bed in the morning and run this this business, because it's doing good for people. Now, we all have to make money, as you say. You can't survive if you don't. So you've got to have that, but that's not the driver. And then we get onto this whole conversation, don't we, about that you've had many times about having a purpose, and I think that's so important. If you don't have that, something that you're getting out of bed for in the morning, I think it's very difficult to find happiness. And there are a lot of people like that in the world.
Yeah, I agree with you, and it's so, and I love the fact that you're bringing in purpose and why, because like that's what was coming up for me as you were talking. It's this repositioning, isn't it? It's sort of the why are you going into the world is not driven by I'm going to make money. It's something in service of that, and then money is earning money is a byproduct of what you're doing in the world and why you're going into the world in the way that you are, or just one byproduct. But I'm just really interested, like well, I guess there's a couple of things coming up for me of, wanting to help people. And I hear a lot of community and relationship and being in service, that maybe being in service is a key value of yours. And that's how you've sort of built your life. And like, where did that come from? Like, if you look back over, your life, where and when did that develop and how did it develop?
That is a good question, because I actually don't think it was that long ago. When I started my career, I was just sort of chasing money, but I wanted to do my own thing. I didn't want to work for somebody else particularly. I did for a while, and but I always wanted to be my own boss and sort of choose my own destiny, as it were. And sometimes I think that was a great idea. Sometimes I think it's a really bad one. But I ran a healthcare communications advertising agency for quite a few years, and that ended up not going very well in the end when we had the financial crash of 2008, and I started another business which was a coaching business, but specifically in the pharmaceutical industry. And for one reason or another, that morphed into starting a company which was designing a what is now called a vape. And it was a product, because of my pharmaceutical background, I was kind of in this pharma world. I ended up setting up a business which was designing what is now called a vape, but at the time it was something that doctors could prescribe to help people stop smoking, which mimicked a cigarette rather than, and would replace sort of nicotine patches, which for various reasons aren't really, they don't help a lot of people to stop smoking. So myself, my two partners in this business, we were motivated by the fact that this was not only going to make huge amounts of money if it worked, but more importantly than that, it was solving a huge global problem, which is killing millions of people every year and thousands every day. And so that was the motivation. We could have something here that is going to be absolutely amazing. We weren't the only people thinking about this sort of concept, but we basically we touted this idea around to a load of different potential investors in healthcare. And crazy as it sounds now, everyone just said, no, it'll never take off. No one's going to go for that. And then I found myself in a position where I didn't really know what to do next. I'd sort of been running my own things for years, and it was really, really difficult, because it wasn't going to be easy for me to go and find a job, because I was sort of mid-40s by then. A job working for somebody else, that is. And I thought long and hard about what I wanted to do next, to the point where I ended up having some coaching, just for somebody to just give me a bit of a different perspective on what I want do. And through that, I discovered that actually the thing that was really driving me was not about was the whole trying to do something that was going to be good for the world. And so I gave that a lot of thought. And then, funnily enough, that's why I ended up starting a coaching business with two other founders as well, because the coaching kind of got me to that point where I thought, right, this is the answer for me. This is what I need to do to find my own happiness, is be in the service of others, doing something that's going to have a great impact on society.
You know, the awareness that you have of your core value empowers you every single day to make decisions that are in alignment with that, and just being aware and giving gratitude for that brings an enormous amount of happiness to your life and being, which, I mean, it's just the place to be, isn't it? It's absolutely fabulous.
Yeah. And my other answer to you is that just thinking of sort of when that might have happened, when I started getting this realization, I think it was when my kids started going to school, because I was running my own business, but it allowed me time to sort of, we shared the sort of pick up and drop off to school. I mean, my wife did way more of it than I did, but I did that as much as I could because I really enjoyed it. And then I could go and watch them playing matches on a Wednesday afternoon or doing gymnastics or whatever it was. And I really prioritized doing this stuff, potentially to the detriment of my career at some point, because it was all time kind of taken out of work. But then the other extreme of that is that I had all these friends whose kids were at the same school, but they were jumping on a train at 5 o'clock in the morning and schlepping into London, and then getting home at 8 o'clock in the morning and their kids are in bed. So they weren't seeing their kids until the weekend. And I'm sure lots of them were earning lots of money, but they weren't seeing their families at all. And subsequently, I think have got very different relationships with their families. I can very happily say, well, I was there all the time. I was a very present dad.
I'm really feeling the choice that you made. At the heart of that is so much love, because that's where we get, our first indication of what love is from our parents and what we see in the household. And so, the sort of both parents being present in your upbringing is such a sign of love. And as you say, like a different sort of modeling, a different set of values. And again, it offers that different perspective of ways to be in the world and starting to think about what's important and what's not. And it sounds as if, through making that choice, it really enriched your life.
It's all about perspective and gratitude for just always being mindful of all the good things and not letting them pass you by.
I was going to ask you that, actually. I was going to ask you, as assuming the perspective of gratitude, what has it brought to your life?
It brings happiness because it's a constant reminder of all the good that there is. But I also think it's if you really focus on the things that you are grateful for, and you're a person who naturally sort of wants to help others, it does help you to kind of frame how you can do that, I think. Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, because sitting alongside gratitude for me is also acceptance. It's a gratitude for all the good things, but acceptance of the things that are not so good, and that might be personal circumstances, but it's also acceptance that everybody's different and everybody's got their own story.
I like the way that you said acceptance. I was thinking, for me, like, my practice of gratitude has made me more resilient, because I feel that I'm better able to hold the as you say, the difficult things that happen in my life, whilst being present and grounded in what's working and what's good, and not losing sight of that. But I actually think your word of acceptance is maybe more appropriate than resilience, because it's that acceptance of what is and being able to see the full picture. So yeah, it doesn't mean that you tell yourself that everything's rosy and great because you then go into the world more grateful. It's a broadening and a capacity to hold the nuance of life and the difficulty that is life.
As you're talking, there are so many things. They're all sort of bound up together, I think. But fundamentally, it's about all of these things are about I come back to this word about perspective. So much of what we think we should do is being dictated by other people who just made it up at some point. Somebody came up with the thought that, oh, this is a good idea and this is how we should do this. And everybody follows. And then if you veer away from that, you're not doing it right. This is not how these things are done. And you're almost made to sort of feel bad or a sort of social pariah if you don't stick to the script, right? And people are sort of scared of going outside of that. I mean, fear drives so much behavior, doesn't it, in people's lives? And this is all bound up with what we're talking about, I think. But so there's another thing is how you those things that we fear in life, generally speaking, are not that bad.
Exactly. 100% agree with you. And it's so funny that you say that, because I was hanging out with my niece and nephew, and I mean, kids are just amazing, aren't they? And my 9-year-old niece turns to me and goes, Auntie Nick, why is an orange called an orange? And I was just like, oh my God, I love these questions because it's exactly what you're saying. At some point, someone decided this was going to be called an orange, and then we were brainstorming, well, what, and it's just something, like you're saying, something just sticks and just garners. So then we were brainstorming, well, if you came across it, what would you have called it? And I would have called it this, that, and the other. And well, that obviously wasn't great branding, and that's why it didn't stick. And it's exactly what you're saying. Like, at some point, this set of rules for living has been developed by someone that has then garnered this, fan base and attention, and then it suddenly becomes law, and then that's the rule book with which, then society exists. And it is really fascinating when you start to pause and question that and get really curious about it, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that actually is part of the reason why I always wanted to run my own business or businesses, because I just never really liked this idea of, you go to work and you're told exactly how something should be done and this is how we do it. And I never really liked that. And I think that also you've got to have that mindset if you're entrepreneurial. How do you say that? Entrepreneurially minded.
Put your teeth back in.
Yeah. That you don't just do what everybody else has been doing, because you wouldn't get anywhere, would you?
But then also it's, I mean, like, obviously we started this conversation and really looking and exploring the concept of happiness and, what makes you happy and what brings you happiness. And I think here you're touching on something else, because, we also know from the data around well-being that autonomy and freedom is really important to people's lived experience, and then consequently subsequently how happy we feel and content we feel in our life. And that's what you're talking, your desire to not work for other people and work for yourself. Like, as you said, there's a huge amount of autonomy and freedom within that, that helps generate a sense of well-being and happiness.
I suppose now, in a more balanced way, what has replaced sort of going to see the kids at school doing sport or whatever is now sort of taking the dog out for a walk whenever I want to. So I my working hours are kind of what I choose them to be. I mean, I work hard like everybody else, but if I fancy and I've got time and I can take the dog out for a walk at 2:00 in the afternoon for an hour and go and get a cup of coffee, that I can do it, and that's brilliant. And that's just, it's freedom. It's also still working, because I go out and walk on the Ashdown Forest, about 10-minute drive from here, And I walk around generally thinking about, what I'm going to be doing the next day, or I'm always thinking about work. I don't really stop thinking about work, and thank goodness I love it. But that's a great time, and I have that freedom to go and do that. And most people don't, do they? They have to be in the office, or they've got to account for their time.
And don't you think that that's what's like really interesting now, like a little bit of a tangent, but the world of work and the tension that we're seeing with these businesses trying to force people to come back into the office, and the resistance that now employees are sort of giving to that, because exactly what you're talking to, this like command and control, people are used to and are respecting the freedom and the autonomy that that COVID gave. I think what you're talking to is people got used to having that freedom and that autonomy, and it made them feel better, and it made them feel more grounded and more balanced and happy. And now this is being pulled away from them.
But the other thing, Nicola, I think, is that you've got to have a job you love doing. I mean, there's a lot of backlash from people. I mean, some people want to be in the office more, and I would venture that those are the people who actually really enjoy their jobs a lot more, and the others who want to be at home and not going to the office, perhaps less so. I mean, it's a generalization, but it just makes me think, if you enjoy your job, you perform so much better, and if you've got the autonomy that goes with that, it's kind of better for everybody.
I don't know about you, but I was not encouraged when I was younger to think about my values, to think about purpose, to think about, then what that would mean in terms of the type of job that I could do. It was very much about like intellect or money, basically. And so I wonder if that is the sort of, the low productivity, the friction that we're seeing, because people actually just aren't, there's this tension inside them where they're realizing that they're unhappy and they're unfulfilled, but they don't know then how to go about making a change or finding a job that, they just maybe think of work as transactional. And actually what you're speaking to and what you've been sharing in your story is how work can be so much more than that. It can give you money to live, and it can feed your soul, and it can have an impact if you want it to, and it can be generative, and all of the beautiful things that we've been talking about. And so I wonder if that's maybe what's at play here, is people that maybe are feeling this tension, this discontent, a place for them to start to look actually is internally reflecting on, well, what is it that fills me up, and what is it that would make me want to jump out of bed in the morning? And there are jobs like that. If you're grounded, like exactly what you were sharing, in every interaction and choice you make in your day-to-day life, you're very aware of how that tracks back and what value that's feeding. So it's conscious choice over how you're building your life and what you're doing with your time, and how you're spending your energy, and what job you do or career you have is just an extension of that. So like maybe that's what's at play here.
Maybe. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because it is a fact that some of us have got more choice than others in what we were able to do and what opportunities are open to us. That's the way of the world. And also things are changing so much, aren't they, with technology and AI coming along. I think a lot of people are worried about whether their job is even going to exist in a couple of years' time. So it's a really crazy time. And as you said earlier, I think we'll look back in years to come at this being a real pivotal moment in society.
And I think that's why, like, going back to I clearly very much share your unpopular opinion, but when you align your happiness or your definition of success with a career and job and making money, then you become more vulnerable to what you're talking about, which is this uncertainty in the world, a lack of autonomy and control and freedom over your time, because it is transactional. You literally are selling your time and your expertise to somebody else, and with that, you're relinquishing control. That is it. Becoming more aware and mindful of what brings you happiness, what nourishes you, and what your values are, how you can build a life that's more aligned to them. They're then going to be your anchors to navigate the uncertainty and the change that is coming. And so the more that actually you can spend time, I think, in contemplation and reflection and building a life, from the inside out, building a more authentic life for you so that you can show up in every area of your life, I think the easier that it is to weather, the uncertainty of what is coming.
The challenge there, really, though, for all of us is for people to be aware of this, right? So you are, and I am, but the whole point of it really is to help people become more self-aware, and all of these things that we're talking about, so they can make these decisions and think about things in a different light, and think about the challenge and face the challenges that all of these changes are bringing to us, and face them and make informed decisions, rather than the situation we find ourselves in now, where people are coming across challenges because their lives are changing, the world of work is changing, and a lot of people are just kind of falling apart as a result of it because they just simply don't know how to deal with it. And all that takes, it really is just a few skills to just learn how to deal with things in a slightly different way, and life is so much easier. But it's how you bring that to people. How do you get that message out to as many people as possible? Another thing that's really important to me is helping young people to grow up with this self-awareness, that we simply don't get. So to your point just now about being taught about purpose, etc., when you're younger, I wasn't either. I think it's a fairly modern phenomenon, isn't it, really, that we talk about purpose. I don't think anybody ever used the word in this context when I was younger. But there is huge value to the world at large if young people can be brought up with this sense of purpose, self-awareness, more confidence, etc. So I would like to see a world where we kind of learn how to deal with things at a much earlier age.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think, what gives me hope, things are changing. And I think, again, it's this, maybe it's the perspective of gratitude, or is it just conscious choice? You can, there's lots of things that are breaking down that are not great. And there are lots of amazing people and movements in the world that are doing, just even your business and my business and the communities that we're a part of. You're sort of, there are people that are advocating more and more for this message. We're making it more accessible, more affordable. It is getting into the mainstream. And so you can't boil the ocean all at once. It's, change happens one person at a time. And it's just, perseverance and patience.
I was thinking of something else as you were talking about the sort of community of people who are the growing community of people who are doing work in this kind of area of well-being and mental health and etc., which is growing, and that's great. And as you were saying that, I was reflecting upon the fact that one of the things that I'm constantly grateful for is being part of that community, because it's just so nice. I mean, the people that I'm working with, all of the coaches and the people within Cognomie, everyone wants to help each other. They're all doing what they're doing because they want to help others, and and it means there's a different vibe about the whole business because of that. It's a nice community to be part of, and that makes the world of work so much more fulfilling as well. but it also makes me think of not spending time doing things and being with people who don't bring you joy. I think we spend so much time, don't we? I suppose in some way, back to my original kind of opening point, we spend so much time trying to impress other people because we want we want to get the business from them, or we want to be seen with them because there's some sort of cachet of being in their circle. I don't know. We spend a lot of time with people that we don't really want to spend time with and doing stuff that we don't really want to do. And sometimes you can't avoid it. We all have to do stuff we don't want to do, like putting the bins out. It's an obvious example. But it's all of these things are so important. Surrounding yourself with the right people, this all adds to your happiness.
Of course. And how are you anchoring that and, and embedding that within your life, like for this year, for 2025? What are some of the ways that you're going to anchor and build more of that community and fulfillment and maximize your happiness this year?
That's a really good question. I think it's about making some big changes, primarily at work. We're bringing in some new people to help us think about things a bit differently, talking about a different perspective. At home, it's a big time now because my son's just left uni. My daughter's in her second year at uni, so she's looking for sort of jobs for when she leaves, or she's looking for an internship for next year. So it's sort of helping them to set themselves up for success, I suppose, because you can only hold their hands for so long. Yeah, always there, but there's only so much you can do. And I think it's just my happiness at home will be making sure that I feel like my wife and we've set them up as well as we possibly can up to this point, and now they're kind of they've got to go and spread their wings. So we're sort of it's a big time because they'll sort of be leaving home soon, and then life will change a lot.
Yeah. And I'm going to ask you, I probably suspect I know what you're going to say, but John, I ask all my guests, what is something that other people value that you don't?
I think it's status. Is that so many people put so much emphasis on their status, at work or in the community or whatever. And I think more often than not, it's at the expense of their happiness. So that's my answer, really. I think that, titles and, being a big man driving around in your flash car around town, it's also meaningless, and people strive for this stuff, but it's not the stuff that brings them happiness. And so, I think people value status way more than I do. I'm not saying they're wrong. It's just that I don't really value that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. There's no judgment behind the question. It's and I really respect what you say. I think I agree. It's who you are is so much more important than what you do and what you have. So I couldn't agree more. John, thank you so much for our conversation. I've absolutely adored it, and I really appreciate
It's been great.
time.
Thanks, Nicola.
Thank you for being part of another great conversation. Your thoughts and feedback really mean the world to me, so please let me know what stood out to you or what topics you'd like us to explore next. Your feedback and input really helps us grow, so please don't hesitate to leave a comment or reach out. If you found value in today's conversation, please share it with someone who might benefit, and subscribe to our channel. It honestly makes a huge difference. Not only does it help us reach more people, but it also helps us grow this incredible community. I want to send a heartfelt thank you to my editor, Stian Ritz, for making every episode sound amazing. And also to Jamie Jenkin for the beautiful music you hear each week. As always, I'm sending you so much love. Bye for now.